Right. So in our discussion on the motion in the ocean, today we are going to go further into the ocean currents. Right. By now we know that the ocean currents, especially the they can cause, or there can be two types of ocean currents actually, the surface currents and deep water currents. And the surface currents are mainly from the wind-driven currents. The main cause of a surface current is the wind, and the other one is the thermal expansion as well as gravity. So in this, due to the wind, we know usually the wind action will be only just on the surface, but there was a phenomenon that we have already discussed, which called the Ekman spiral or Ekman transport. If you remember, where if you consider that movement in the sea surface, if the water movements in small layers like this, right? So wind is trying to drag the surface layer into the same direction as the winds blow, but since this top layer is attached to the next level and the wind effect on the next layer is a little less than this one, the top one. So though it is trying to go straight, then it has to drag the next level, which will turn a little bit because it's flowing very bit slower than the top one. Likewise, in each level, so it should reduce the speed as well as, and because of that, the net effect actually from the wind is different from the wind direction. So the net movement of the water is different from the direction of the wind. That is actually explained in this, what we call the Ekman spiral or Ekman transport. If you didn't get this one correctly, I have mentioned before as well, but there are a few diagrams also here. And as you can see here in this, actually this concept was put forward by the scientist called Ekman, but actually this was observed by the scientist called the Nansen water bottle, that is well-known scientist. So when they were doing some expeditions in the polar region, they observed that the movement of icebergs, like in this diagram, the movement of ship as well as the iceberg. I mean, when the ship is like in the neutral position, not engaging with the engine, then they start drifting. Even the iceberg were drifting to a different direction than the wind. In fact, actually, this was to the right, in the northern hemisphere. Right? So the movements of the object, like anything flowing, was like to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. Right? Again, this is in line with our previous discussion, that is the Coriolis effect. The same Coriolis effect is the reason for this one. Now, because of this Coriolis effect, as well as the concept of Ekman spiral or Ekman transport, so actually the ocean currents movement is to the right. Actually, it is 45 degrees right to the wind direction. You can't even imagine, you see. So this is the direction of wind, but actually the net movement of the ocean currents will be 45 degrees right in the northern hemisphere, and it will be totally opposite in the southern hemisphere. That will 90 degrees left in the southern hemisphere, right? So keep this one in mind. I have explained the concept also behind. Now, how does this affect? That is the important thing, right? How does this affect the ocean currents as well as the process in the ocean? Actually, this has a very important consideration in the oceanography. Like for example, in there are two graphics here. In your left one, you see this is in the southern hemisphere. You imagine a coastal zone in the southern hemisphere somewhere. Now the wind is blowing from south towards the north, like here. You see the wind blowing here in this direction to the north. But since it is southern hemisphere, now we know that the ocean current movement due to the wind would be to the left, right? If it is in the southern hemisphere, the actual current movement will be to the left. Now the wind direction is here and to the north from the south, and the actual water movement will be to the left. And this will be opposite if the wind blowing from the north in the same southern hemisphere, if the wind blowing from the north towards south, now still the water movement will be to the left from that direction, which means the water will be moved and flow towards the beach, whereas the previous case, the water movement will be from the beach towards the offshore, or that will move the water away from the beach. Now this bringing very important concept, which is what we call as a upwelling in this case, right? Where due to the wind blow and resulting the surface water movement to the left, which means the surface water will flow offshore areas, and to fill in that gap, what happened? The bottom water will come to the surface, right? When the surface water move that way, the bottom water will come to the surface like this, and this we call as upwelling. It's locally called Uttupai. I don't think you have heard this term, the upwelling. But this concept is very important. I'll come to that one later on. But so the opposite happened in if the wind blowing from the north, since the movement will be towards the beach, bringing the surface water here, and that will push the surface water to the bottom, and resulting a concept called downwelling. Now, the important thing here, especially in the upwelling, these nutrients are usually they are heavier, right? And usually the bottom waters are denser because they are nutrient rich, and they can be even colder because of that they are denser. So usually they are in the bottom. They don't get a chance to come to the surface to be oxygenated, as well as to give that nutrient back to the surface. Now this process, what we call the upwelling, is very important, that bring the nutrients back to the surface, and which will support again for the phytoplankton and the primary productivity. And not only that, they low oxygenated, and also the carbon dioxide is higher in the bottom waters. That will bring that carbon dioxide to the surface, and the surface oxygenated waters will go to the bottom, which will support the marine organisms as well, right? So this process of upwelling is really important process in the ocean that will keep the productivity in the ocean. Especially this is important for the tropical oceans. As we have discussed before, in the tropical ocean, there is no much mixing. I will come to that one later on. And the other hand, in this case is downwelling, that will take the oxygenated water to the bottom, which also will be important for the marine organisms, right? So, but especially the upwelling is very important, right? So the opposite happened in the northern hemisphere. If you take the same concept in the northern hemisphere, that what we call, this is called as a coastal upwelling. Upwelling can happen even in the deep waters, but here what we're talking about the coastal upwelling. Unfortunately, actually, I got these images from one of the books, but the diagrams was actually drawn. Actually, it's wrong. So I had to flip the images, so that's why you can see it. It's like you see a mirror image. But anyway, you can understand the concept, right? So in the northern hemisphere, if the wind blowing from the north, we know that in the northern hemisphere, due to the Coriolis effect, the surface water will be moved away from the beach, resulting in upwelling in this case, compared to the upwelling in the southern hemisphere, will be when the wind is blowing from the southern direction, but here in this case in the northern direction, right? And anyway, this upwelling is still there, but if the wind is blowing from the south, then there will be a downwelling. Right? So the same upwelling and downwelling will be in the both northern hemispheres, depend on where from which side this wind is blowing. Right? So this concept is very important. As you can see here, the surface water moving away from the beach, and the bottom waters will come to the surface to fill in that gap, making upwelling. And this is called the upwelling currents, which is one of the very important process in the ocean. I hope you got this concept of upwelling. So as I discussed before, the upwelling is very important. That will bring colder, nutrient-rich waters back to the surface. Colder, because the bottom waters are usually colder. These colder waters bring back to the surface with nutrient-rich. And this process is very important for, especially for the phytoplankton. And everyone else in the food web is dependent on the phytoplankton. So the increased productivity of phytoplankton, which means the whole ecosystem will be much more productive than usual. So these coastal upwellings are very important. Any areas with coastal upwelling, they usually very productive. These ecosystem will be extremely productive than other areas. Right? So upwelling is very important. So if there is no upwelling, especially in the tropical ocean, if there is no upwelling, then our waters will be extremely non-productive, because especially in the tropics, because of the thermocline, the bottom and the surface waters are not mixing, and the nutrient-rich bottom waters will be in the bottom forever, and then the surface waters won't have enough nutrient for primary producers to function. So, and resulting in less and less productivity in the surface waters. But this upwelling is very important. Okay, so let's move a little bit further into the ocean circulation, especially the surface circulation. Now, in this slide, you will see that the movement in the current movement pattern here. Right? You see, there is a direction. You will just look at the direction of their movement. Here it's in this direction, and some of the currents from like north to south, whereas this one from west to east, and here it is from east to west, and again from south to north. And if you put together, like in this ocean basin, it's in the North Pacific. If you consider as a sort of a basin, here, this water column move like that, like this. Like if you take this as a whole, this like a sort of a circular movement. Did you see that it is sort of a circular movement? And even here, see, even these all different types of ocean currents, they have names, like Eurasian current, California current, like North Pacific drift. Like you don't have to memorize these things, just to know, just to recognize different currents. They are given names. Gulf Stream, Canary currents, likewise. Like in all the ocean basins, you see this kind of a circular movement, but it will be a different currents with a different name, but when we consider them together, they will be like a more or less a circular movement. And they are called as the ocean gyres. It's motion in the sort of a circular pattern. We call it as a gyre, ocean gyres. And this is because of the, in the northern hemisphere, because of the Coriolis effect, the movement is always deflect to the right. And that's why it's happening like this. Movement is right in this case as well. And even here, because of these land masses, these currents cannot move straight. So there is a barrier here, and they have to turn back. And the only direction they can turn is because to the right because of the Coriolis effect. That's why it's circulating like this. Like everywhere in the northern hemisphere, these circular movements or the gyres moving in this kind of a pattern, and totally opposite in the southern hemisphere. Same gyres, but it will be circulating or rotating in the other way around. But they all are gyres in the ocean basin. Like, I hope you got the concept here. So most of these ocean currents move in a sort of a circular movement as a whole, not as individual current, right? So you will notice this circular movement in these surface currents in the ocean basins, right? And which we call the ocean gyre, circular movement in the ocean current, right? So in this next diagrams also you see a different this kind of a gyres, and as we know, the ocean currents move in a different direction, as we already know, and this movement is in a different direction, and they have different names, but they can be independent currents, right? So as we discussed before, they have different names, they are different currents, but you can take them as separate, but they are not really separate, which we can discuss later. So they have circular movement of circulation, and you can see here in the bottom, there's one current which has no circular movement, straight. That's the only the current that is unaffected, because there is no landmass to change the direction very much. So it will be flowing like this. It's called the Antarctic circumpolar current. Circumpolar means it's rotating around the globe, right? So it's only the different current than the others, right? All right. So we call this boundary currents because these currents are moving around the boundaries of the continent because of these barriers. The continents are barriers, and that's why they are rotating around the boundary of these countries, and we call them as the boundary currents. But that's all in general, but there are different types of different currents in reality. Now, if you go back to our early discussion on the direction of the atmospheric circulation, now you can match the atmospheric circulation, the direction of atmospheric circulation, and look at it here in the tropic. The direction is from the northwest, and in the southern hemisphere it is from southeastern. Right? So likewise, these are the westerly winds and the polar easterlies. Now, you remember, just try to remember the direction of these movements in the atmospheric circulation. You try to match with the ocean current movement, right? So the very much the movement of the ocean currents match with the movement in the atmospheric or the atmospheric circulation. So that is clearly indicated that the ocean currents, the path, the direction of the ocean movement actually very much governed by the atmospheric circulation. Right? So that's very clear here. Right? So you will notice that there is two colors in this the different currents. The color represent actually the amount of energy or the temperature. These red ones are warm water currents, whereas these blue ones are cold water currents. You see, most of the currents in the tropics are red color, which means they are carrying warm water. And now these currents play important role, which I will discuss later, because they are moving the temperature around across the globe, right? From here to here and from here to here. Not only that, that will take this warm water into the cold or the temperate areas, making these areas warmer than it should be. And the opposite also happens. This will bring some currents, like these currents will bring cold water into the tropical areas, keeping the temperature down in the temperate country, sorry, in the tropical country. So even here you see Canary currents bringing cold water to the tropics, making the temperature, bringing the temperature down. Even the southern hemisphere is like so. Very important that the ocean currents, especially for the thermoregulation in our Earth, right? So that will keep the tropical waters colder than it should be, and the temperate countries warmer than it should be. That make the people and the animals to be more inhabitable. Otherwise, we could have experienced even higher temperatures as the inhabitants in the tropics as well, especially close to the equator. Right? So this very important role, the ocean circulation in thermoregulation. Right. So in the next graphics also showing the direction as well as the warm water, cold water current movement. Yeah, and we can see the Antarctic circumpolar current here, also called the west wind drift. There's a name for this one called the west wind drift. Right? Again, you don't have to memorize this term. If you want to do, of course you can, but look at the equator here. The ocean current movement in the southern hemisphere is like this, and we take Indian Ocean for example. You see the movement in the southern hemisphere from the west to east, whereas in the northern hemisphere here it is from east to west. But you can see there is in the northern hemisphere again there is another movement from west to east. Right, I'll come to that one later on. Right, keep in mind that movement. All right, so as we already discussed before, the ocean currents, they move not only the matter, not only the water, sea water, but also they take warm water to the temperate countries and colder waters to the tropics. And you can see some of these computer generated images, this flowing of the warm waters to the cold areas, regulating the temperature in these areas and bringing colder waters here to different seasons, right? So these play important role in that aspect. I hope you got that idea. Now, if we go back to the previous thing, like in the Indian Ocean, the ocean currents, here it's the Indian Ocean. The movement in the northern hemisphere, we see from east to west, more or less, and in the southern hemisphere also there is a from east to west movement, but in between you can see there is another current going on the opposite direction. Now this is interesting, since the trade wind flow from east to west, so current should be flowing in this direction from here to here, here to here, but there is another current flowing back. This is something very interesting because you know, this because of the trade wind pushing the tropical seawater from east to west, making sort of a hill formation. You know, it's pushing the water column from south. So sorry, from the east to west, making sort of an angle, like some slope like this, because it's pushing from this side to the other side, right? So now from the both sides, because of the trade wind in the northern and southern hemispheres, and in between this the water is flowing back like a stream in between the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, and they are called, it's like the other called the northern equatorial current, southern equatorial current, and in between there is something called equatorial counter current. Counter means against, something again, right? So it should be equatorial counter current. Sometimes they call counter equatorial current, but the best name is for equatorial counter current, right? So this is especially very important in Indian Ocean. The two currents moving in one direction, but in between there is another, like a sandwich. There's another layer going opposite direction. So as you can understand, this is going to be very complicated something, right? So I'm just telling this the simplest thing that can happen in the ocean, but they are far more complex than what we discuss here. But we're just trying to understand like a different type of movement in the ocean. I hope you got some idea on that thing, right? So this equatorial current versus equatorial counter current, that's the equatorial currents are because of the trade wind pushing from the east to west from both direction, and in between there the water column is pushing back, right? So it won't happen perhaps in the same time, but maybe different seasons it will be on the other direction, right? So that the equatorial current versus equatorial counter current, right? So the other thing we discuss about is the Antarctic circumpolar current. That's the only current that's going around the globe without much obstacle. So that because of that, it's going right around the globe. So graphics show in the left image, and the right one is the computer generated the flow of the ocean current, and you can see it's more or less a circular movement around the globe, and this is called the Antarctic circumpolar current or west wind drift. And so the similarly you will see subpolar gyres. Now we talk about the subtropical and tropical gyres like in this ocean basin. Similarly, you will see in this subpolar region similar gyres like here, right? So, and even right from subpolar here to even the polar region, you will see similar gyres. That gyres also will be circulating warm water as well as cold water. But of course, these temperature will be extremely low because they are already in the polar region. Right. So that's how the, in basic terms, how the ocean surface currents work. Right. So as you can see, they have different names, especially the Gulf streams. The Agulhas current here in the very close to in the Indian Ocean, and Somali current. They are very important for us, and North Equatorial, South Equatorial, and Equatorial counter current. These are the Indian Ocean currents. Now, then all together we can call the Indian Ocean gyre, like here. Right? So it will mix with even the west wind drift from the, like in the polar region, right? So that's how the ocean currents work in the across the globe, right? So so far what we discussed is about the surface currents. That's mainly because of the wind and also the thermal expansion in the tropical and especially in the tropical region. Now the next thing is about the deep water current. How can this happen? You know that the deep water currents, as I already discussed, they should be mainly because of the density differences. If there is a density differences, then the water can move from bottom up or from top to bottom because of the density differences. So how the density differences can occur? That's mainly from temperature differences. You know, if the colder the water, it will be more denser. The other one is the salinity. Higher the salinity, the water will be more denser. So now you know the two causes of the density changes. That's the temperature. Lower the temperature, higher the density. Salinity, higher the salinity, higher the density. Now any changes in the temperature or salinity will result in the deep water movement or the deep water current. Especially there will be a vertical movement from top to bottom or bottom to top, as you would see in the this image on your right. Some water, they can move because of the changes in the density, maybe due to a salinity increase or lowering of temperature. For example, if the like maybe subtropical areas, when the winter season, the temperature in the surface is going to go down. The reducing temperatures, when the temperature of the surface water is below the bottom waters, now the surface water will be denser than the bottom, they start sinking. Right? Similarly, if there is like a high salinity because of the lot of evaporation, if that increase the salinity, which means it will increase the density and it will start sinking. But most of the cases, the temperature is one of the main reasons, right? So that's the reason for the movement in the bottom up or top to bottom movement or the deep water circulation, right? So especially the buoyancy changes because of the density as well as the gravitational force. The gravity will mostly affect this kind of a movement as well, right? So other than, but the salinity and the temperature is the main cause of the deep water current, right? But now again, if we go back to our previous discussion on the upwelling and downwelling, now this again will result in upwelling and downwelling even in the deep waters, not only in the coastal region. So previously we discussed about the coastal upwellings. Right. So even this can happen in the coastal zone and as well as the deep waters as well. So now the same phenomenon can happen even in the deep ocean, where resulting upwelling and downwelling. And this not only surface water, but the surface currents, but deep water currents also will result in this kind of upwelling situation, bringing low oxygenated, high carbon dioxide bearing, and high nutrient denser waters. But when, of course, they will be lighter, then they will come to the surface and bringing the oxygenated nutrient poor waters back to the bottom, which will be again recharged with the nutrient, complete this cycle. You know, these cycles are very important again, and will bring in nutrients back to the surface, will bloom the phytoplankton, increasing the productivity. So these upwelling processes, again, very important for the marine environment. So by now we know that this both wind-driven currents as well as deep water currents, they all result in some vertical movements in the water column, which will result in upwelling and downwelling, which will mixing the water, making it more productive, as well as even the temperature will be circulated from between the surface and bottom as well. Again, that will result in some sort of a thermoregulation as well. So these processes are very important for the ocean, not only the coastal zone, but also even in the deep waters, right? Now, this kind of the ocean current movement we call thermohealing circulation, thermohealing, because this ocean current movement is mainly because of temperature and salinity changes, and that's why we call it thermohaline circulation, or THC. So as you can see in the right side top image, especially when like we already know about the ocean currents, some of these currents moving from equator towards the polar region through the subtropics, warmer waters like here, the warmer waters, they are flowing on the surface like here, but in the tropical waters, as you already know, there is something called thermocline, which is a barrier for the surface and deep water to mix. Right, so we have already discussed this thing called the two-box model, because surface and bottom, they don't never mix in the equatorial region, especially if there is no some sort of a overturn or the upwelling. Then because of the thermocline, the surface and bottom waters, they won't mix. Now when they move, the surface water move towards the polar region, especially in the subtropical areas. Now they are getting colder and colder. The surface waters will be colder and colder. Now at a time, the surface water temperature will be below the bottom water, because you know they are going towards the polar. The temperature will be lower than the bottom waters. And now what happened? Because the lower temperature means higher density, then they will start sinking. Right now, the surface waters in the tropics, they are moving towards the polar region, and they will, these warm waters going into this region, and they will sink in the polar or subtropical region. Right, so now making another sort of a similar process like a upwelling and downwelling, and that the water has been sinking, they will again, deep water currents will bring back to the surface in the tropics. Likewise, you know, there are a lot of these kind of cycles. It's very extremely complex things, but I'm just explaining very briefly, right? So this thermohaline circulation is very important for keeping the Earth's temperature again have some sort of regulation, as well as bringing the surface waters to the bottom and bottom waters to the up, and also circulating them from tropical to the polar region as well, right? So making even the less mixing tropical waters to mix, the ocean currents play a role. right? So in reality, this is how you would look like the thermohaline circulation. As you can see in the equator, from equator to the polar region, you see the equatorial region. In the surface waters, there is less mixing, and always there is a two box model. But when they are approaching the polar region, they sink, but they will come back from the bottom to other areas also, right? So there's a lot of different types of mixing in this sense, right? So this thermohaline circulation or vertical movement is very important, right? Now, now we talk about these currents in different angle or like by different segments or different entity. But if you consider all these different types of currents as a whole, right, or what we call the currents in the real time or real ocean, what it would look like, because they're moving in different direction in different areas, and some are going vertical to bottom and bottom to surface as well. And if we put everything together, it will make some unique form of circulation, what we call global ocean conveyor belt, right? So if it is too difficult, you don't have to again memorize these things. At least you need to know this is some sort of a unifying theory. Though we talk about this different type of ocean currents moving in different directions, but in reality, as a net or as average or the net movement of the ocean currents, like one single belt like this is called global ocean conveyor belt. It's like a belt. If you look here, it's the red color means they are moving warm water, whereas the blue color means they are the colder waters. It shows the direction of movement from these arrows. This is the cold waters always moving in the bottom, and the surface waters carrying warm waters. They are sinking in the subpolar region, but in this case, somewhere between the subpolar and polar region, like across the Norway, they are sinking here and going in the as a deep water currents, but they are coming again to the surface like in the Indian Ocean, especially we see the Agulhas current here. Likewise, if you put everything together, it will like this kind of ocean, single current or the belt connecting all the main oceans, like main three and also the other main oceans together, making one belt. And that's called the global ocean conveyor belt. Now, in next one also explaining this like different currents, but when put together, they are resulted in this kind of a global ocean conveyor belt, right? So in reality, there's a one connection between these oceans in a one belt. Right? So which means all the oceans are in reality, they are connected to one another. Though we consider they are separate, in reality, they are not separated. There's one reality. Now, how we believe that these ocean currents move in this kind of a pattern, as well as they are moving in a circular pattern, as well as the currents in here, like some water body in here will go to somewhere else, another different ocean. How we determine, is this really happen? There are a lot of computer models has done, and not only that, like some floating devices they have used, like some tracking devices they have used to track the movement of this ocean water or the ocean currents. Right. One classic example, actually, I think I have shown you a video also in the last week. This is one of the ship accident. Right? In the here in the Pacific. The ship accidents also result in losing so many of these the world famous shoe brand Nike, and some of the glove, as well as the some other the rubber ducks. Actually, there were some toys, especially the rubber ducks, the shoes, as well as some glove. The accident would happen somewhere here. Now the scientists actually, you see how the scientists work on even using this kind of a tragic situation. They have used that one to do some ocean monitoring, and especially the ocean current movement. They track actually at the movement of this the floating the substance, like the shoes and the whatever that fall into the sea from that ship. Right, in the time they noticed that the shoes were found in different locations, like in 1, 2, 3, 4, likewise. They monitored for several years. You see, from about 4 years, they monitored what happened to these shoes. They recovered these shoes from different locations, right? Even after several years, like 4 years, they were even noticed from here, right? So, and you can
China,
see
December 1991. It began in the toy factory where plastic ducks were made. A container ship loaded with plastic toys left Hong Kong in the direction of the USA. But then, a stormy night came in January 1992. A container fell overboard. After a clash with another container, the plastic toys were abandoned in the Pacific Ocean. The journey of the 29,000 floating ducks began. The first 19,000 ducks went to the south. After 3 months, they landed on the shores of Australia, Indonesia, and even Chile. The other 10,000 friendly floaties had other plans and went to the north. 32,000 kilometers from their starting point, the ducks were bobbing along Alaska and back around. It took them 3 years to reach the place where they fell overboard, which was very interesting for oceanographers. By following the plastic ducks, they learned a lot about the ocean currents. After their tour on the Pacific Ocean, the ducks ended up chilling on the beaches of Hawaii. But some of them were going to explore the ocean. They went back to Alaska, but this time the remaining floaties drifted north through the Bering Strait. In the Arctic Ocean, the ducks went further east and froze into a block of ice and were slowly crossing the pole at 2 kilometers a day. After 5 years, the ice package reached the Atlantic Ocean. The friendly floaties were released from the ice and headed south. They were spotted at the place the Titanic sank. But the brave ducks survived the icebergs. After a while, the ducks landed on the beaches of the USA, where collectors rewarded $100 for those who found them. But for some of them, the adventure wasn't over yet. A small group of the plastic ducks were heading east again. In July 2007, after 15 years and 17,000 miles, the ducks ended their journey on the shore of Scotland. But unfortunately, it didn't end so well for all the ducks. While most of them are now drinking Scottish whiskey, are rewarded $100 on the American market, or enjoying a cocktail on the beaches of Hawaii, for some of them, their journey ended in the big plastic soup in the north of the Pacific Ocean.
So I hope you got a much better understanding from that story about this movement of the ducks. Right, you see how you can use some of the accidental things to make it to a science, like the ship accident in Sri Lanka. We could have done something like that some people have done a little bit of a tracking of, especially the movement of the this plastic nodules, but I don't think we haven't done like that kind of a extensive study on that. Something to think of, right? So similarly, you see the movement of different floating things, especially the marine debris. You can track them. Actually, there are a lot of research on this movement of floating debris, as well as some scientists use even like a drift card, as you can see here. This is NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration in US. They have done some research on like using some drift card to understand how this the ocean currents move. Okay. But other than that, the movement of debris, especially in the Pacific Ocean, I don't know whether you have heard about something called the Great Pacific Ocean Garbage. Right? There's huge patch of plastic debris in the Pacific. They are like several kilometers long and so much deep. Big layer of plastic that has been dumped to the ocean. Now they are circulating as a big patch, as you can see here in the even from the satellite, you can detect these the garbages here. And time to travel, they are hitting to different beaches, but still large portion of this plastics are right in the middle, circulating with the ocean gyres. Interesting, right? To study the oceanography. Okay, so that's in the Pacific Ocean, but how about the Indian Ocean? There's something we need to be very familiar with, especially in the Indian Ocean. We need to understand the different oceanography in the Indian Ocean. How the Indian Ocean, the movement in the currents as well as the weather pattern in the Indian Ocean, right? So the Indian Ocean has unique type of ocean currents. What we earlier discussed, something like the equatorial current, both in the south and west, south and northern, but also the equatorial countercurrents. As there is something special, especially what we call the monsoon. We know something called the monsoon. Right? Monsoon is actually something to deal with the change in the wind pattern in the Indian Ocean. Right? So something we refer to as this monsoon, actually some unique condition in the Indian Ocean. But of course, I think in the Pacific Ocean also something similar to this concept, but it's real monsoon actually we experience in the Indian Ocean. That is, we call the monsoon reversal, because the climate reverses because of this monsoon. Now, how this happened and what happened is in something what we call the monsoon. Right? So now, I mean, most of you may be like more than 20 years old, right? 20, 22 years maybe. Now, all of us have heard about something called the monsoon from as childhood. I don't know how many of you think of what is this monsoon? How does it happen? And how does it impact on us? Of course, we know how it is impact on us, but what are these really monsoon and how does this go? I don't think you have heard about or actually you think of that, unless maybe few of you. So now, actual reason why the monsoon reversal, or what is this monsoon reversal? Now we know the most of the background to understand this concept, because we know that something called the overhead sun. You know, the sun may be sometimes just above the equator, right? Somewhere here. When it is just above the equator, or at least when they are just above the Indian Ocean, like here, they're warmer you can experience a warmer temperatures in the ocean side than the land in the Indian subcontinent, which means the warmer here and the colder here. We know that because of the warmer, sorry, this is the other way, right? This happened in the, like here, like when the overhead sun in the Indian Ocean, in the sea, then the warmer here, and in the land it is the colder this side. Then the wind start blowing from land towards the ocean, right? Because it's warmer here and it's the light air start moving up, and the wind try to catch this up, right? So resulting in the wind blowing from this direction, from northwestern direction, and that's where the northwestern monsoon, right? But that time we call the winter monsoon because it's the colder weathers in this part of the world, or that the ocean is warmer in this case. But it's the other way around. It's called the summer monsoon, which is the overhead sun is in the land this time. Somewhere here is warmer than the land side. So which means now the wind is blowing from the southwestern side, right? Previously it's the northeastern, this is southwestern direction towards the land. And this is the summer condition because it's the summer for the land, right? So this is actually the reversal of this, what we call the monsoon. So you will get a totally different experience. You will experience a lot of rain because especially in the Sri Lanka, due to the hill country areas, wind blowing from this direction result in a lot of rain into the southern and western areas, and the sea condition will be extremely bad in the southern and western end. Like this is the season we are experiencing, but now we are moving a little bit beyond that into monsoon. But that is the situation, summer monsoon situation. And the other season, then the northeastern time, where you will experience a lot of rain from the eastern side, but this time actually you will have rain to the whole country. But the sea condition will be extreme bad in the north and east, but will be calmer in the western and southern end. So that's where we have two seasons. Like even the tourists arriving to country, they have to go either to southern or western coast during the winter time, right? And during the summertime, they have to go to the other side because it's calmer in the other side, right? So this reversal is there, but with this reversal, the whole climate, the rain, the wind pattern, everything change, result in the rains and floods. So that affects very much on us. So the concept of monsoon is very important in the Indian Ocean. That affects very much our livelihood as well as our life, but also the weather patterns. So again, this concept of monsoon now is something in the atmosphere actually, but it's resulted in a lot of changes in the ocean currents as well. Right? So the monsoon, very important in this case, right? So that is the situation in the Indian Ocean monsoon. So you have to read a little bit further on this, the Indian Ocean monsoon, because that's the most important condition for the Indian Ocean, especially for us. We are very much get influence from this, what we call the monsoon. I hope you got some idea about the monsoon, right? So that's about the ocean currents, basically the wind-driven currents as well as the deep ocean currents. But other than that, there are few other currents little bit localized actually. But of course, there is something the other than that's the tides, which we'll also discuss later on. There is also a video already uploaded. So this localized currents includes something called its longshore currents, which I have already discussed at the one moment in the beginning. The longshore currents are the movement of currents, something a little bit parallel to the shore, and they are very important in movement of the sediments, especially in the coastal zone, right? So all the coastal erosion and sand accretion or deposition and the erosion, they all result from this what we call the longshore current. So they are moving in sort of a little bit angle to the shore, though we call this as a parallel, but that will result in the movement of particle in some sort of a zigzag pattern in a net movement, resulting in a movement of sediment from one side to another. Right, so the longshore currents are very important, especially for developing or eroding the coastal features, structures, right? You may read a little bit further on the longshore currents as well, right? And there is another very important type of ocean current. I'm not too sure whether you have heard about. Once I have mentioned before, it's called the rip current. Rip current. It is some sort of a hidden danger. Not many people know about this unless like you are like a lifesaver or like someone from the Navy or the Coast Guards, or someone who is working on this field. Not many people know about something called the rip current, right? So the rip currents are again a result from the longshore currents that we just discussed. Right? So what happened here? I will show you an animation to understand how actually this the rip currents happen. But most important thing is that they are extremely dangerous. Right? These rip currents that can be just in the very shallow waters. Right? You can get this rip current even in the very shallow waters, and maybe look like extremely calm waters, but even in that situation, you will see this kind of rip currents, right? Like no, maybe it's like a very common or like a popular tourism beach that you often go, but you see a lot of people will be playing somewhere here or the other side. No one will notice, but one person or a couple of persons might be taken to the sea within a brief period of time. Right? They will be just dragged into the ocean in a hurry or so quick. He or she might not even time to think of. They will just drag to the little bit deep ocean without any notice, without any alarm, right? And this dragging of someone into the ocean like this is mainly because of this something called the rip current, right? So how this happens
on coastlines with breaking
is
waves. When inbound waves break more strongly in some locations, circulation cells form, causing outbound rip currents to travel in narrow, fast-moving belts. As waves break over a sandbar, the water level on the landward side increases, creating a pressure gradient that drives the current along shore. Longshore currents converge and turn outward through the low water zone, at which point it becomes a rip current. Its velocity depends on the height meters per second. Swimmers who encounter a rip current should not swim against the current. Float outbound along the current until it weakens, then swim parallel to the shore. Then toward the shore along the inbound wave.
right. I think got some idea about the rip current from that one, but in very basic terms, how it occurs actually mainly because of the main reason is the longshore currents when they are flowing across a sandbar or something like that, right? When it try to go over the sandbar and hitting the beach, and when they are on their way back, perhaps it might be going to, like if there is like a two sandbars like this, like when the currents moving like this direction, and it might go over the sandbar, and since there is two sandbars on the either side, that the current might right pass or the go back through that channel in between the two sandbars. You see that because there is a channel, that water movement will be in a very high speed, right? So it will flow back in extremely high speed, which even a expert swimmer, you won't be able to swim against this current because it's extremely powerful. It will drag you in a few seconds into the deep ocean, few meters, few hundred meters sometimes, right? So there is no way that you can swim against this current, because that is going to be extremely powerful, right? So only the way you can do, like there are some instructions. Don't fight the current, because if current is extremely powerful. Usually say that even an Olympic swimmer, you won't be able to fight back this kind of a current, right? But what you can see is like you just, if you are not panic, you can just float on the surface, right? You just can float, and you know these currents usually, since it's the longshore currents, they will like incoming waves. Along with the incoming waves, you would be able to come back, or you can wait for the assistance, right? But what the best thing to do is just to escape a little bit, like while you are dragging. If you can swim like in an angle, like a few meters, perhaps you will avoid this current and you will be able to come back. But if you are like a panic, and it will be really difficult for you to handle, right? So so that's about the rip currents. You may read a little bit on this as well, right? You see the rip currents can be anywhere, like even in the very calm water, sometimes you will get this kind of a rip currents. So even you won't notice when you are in the water. So that's why in the in the tourism beaches, you should have a lifeguards are in a like some sort of a hut in a high position, that they can observe this this kind of a rip currents, and they can look for anyone drag into the ocean, right? So only the experienced lifesavers only can actually save a person from this kind of situation, right? So keep in mind the rip currents, and the other localized currents is the tsunami, which you already know. I don't want to go into very much details, but the tsunamis are again extremely dangerous type of the waves, actually. They are called tsunami waves, right? So they can be mainly because of the underwater earthquakes or volcanic activities, or as we know, some of the divergent or convergent plate boundary, like they can cause this kind of a tsunami situation, just like what happened in the Indian Ocean tsunami. In that case, you can see the animation here. There's no audio actually, just an animation. And this is how how they can start a tsunami wave, especially in a subduction, which will result in a large tsunami wave, which the wavelength will be extremely high, extremely long, and you won't notice because the height is very low. And when they approach, the coast is the problem, because in that case the wavelength will be reduced, but the wave height will increase. That is the problem. We see when it approach the coastal zone, when we hit the coast, in the shallow areas, the wave height will be extremely high, but still they are extremely powerful, and that will cause a lot of destruction, lot of damages in the coastal zone, as you would see in this the graphics. Can go, it will be resulting very high waves. Sorry, I think we were disconnected. All right, I think we have connected again. So that's how what happened in the 2014 tsunami as well. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Right. So that's what actually happened in during the 2014 tsunami as well, right? So since we don't have much time, so I don't want to go into very detail, but you need to read a little bit on the longshore currents and the rip currents, and of course the tsunami waves, right? Because they are very much, and also the Indian Ocean, the monsoon as well, which we are very much influenced from these things. So that's the end of today's session, as well as that will bring us to the end of the motion in the ocean. But there are a little bit of things like we need to discuss, something like the importance of ocean waves and currents, which you may already know, but we will discuss these things later on. Hope that make much clearer for you on these motion in the ocean, right? Okay, we'll meet again next week.